Index funds, ETFs, mutual funds. They're all very similar investments, but still different enough that they have slightly different names. What I want to know is, are any of these investments so different that investing in one will have more benefits than investing in the other? In other words, will any of these investments have a significant impact on your wealth in the future? Because that's the only reason you're investing in the first place, to build wealth. But if you're choosing the wrong investments, then you may be causing yourself to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in future gains and possibly even millions. So, of these three, which is the better investment? Now, before we actually choose a winner, I think it's going to be critical that you understand what each of these three investments are and what makes them so unique from one another. Now, on a very basic level, all three of these are types of investment funds. Now, that may have been super obvious to you because the word fund is literally in all three of them. An investment fund is basically just a pool of money that multiple investors pay into. The collective capital of all these investors combined allows the fund to buy into a broad selection of stocks, bonds, and other assets. Investment funds basically allow you to add hundreds and many times even thousands of different stocks, bonds, and other types of assets into your portfolio without you having to actually go out and buy all of those assets individually. It's honestly one of the best and easiest ways to invest your money and build your future fortune. Even Warren Buffett once told me that the best way to invest your money is with a low-cost index fund. Okay, so now that you know what an investment fund actually is, let's start going over the individual types of investment funds, starting with ETFs, or exchange traded funds. And it's a type of investment fund that actually trades on the stock market just like stocks. A really easy way to think of an ETF is as a basket, and that basket can hold thousands of different assets, including stocks, bonds, REITs, and sometimes even derivatives. For example, let's say you wanted to invest in the S&P 500 index. Well, you could technically go and buy all 500 stocks that make up that index, spending tens and thousands of dollars buying each stock individually, or you could just buy a single share of an S&P 500 ETF and give your portfolio the same exact exposure for a fraction of the cost. And because ETFs trade on the stock market just like stocks, they're an ideal investment for somebody who's looking for liquidity and just overall flexibility with their investment. If you ever needed to sell your ETFs quickly, as long as the stock market was open, you could hop on your computer or your phone, execute a sell order, and then quickly turn your ETFs into cash within a minute or two. Next, index funds. What are these? An index fund is essentially the same thing as an ETF. Now, the biggest difference between the two is that unlike ETFs, which are bought and sold on the stock market, index funds are not. Instead, to invest in index funds, in most cases, you have to open a brokerage account with the broker in whose index funds you wish to invest in. For example, if you ever wanted to invest in, say, a Vanguard index fund, you'll need to open up a brokerage account with Vanguard. The same is true with Fidelity's index funds, Charles Schwab, and many others. So as the name implies, index funds invest primarily in stock market indexes, and there are thousands of different indexes in the US stock market alone. The three most popular indexes that you'll likely recognize include the S&P 500, Dow Jones Industrial Average, and the NASDAQ Composite. The goal of an index fund is to track the performance of a particular index as closely as possible. Let's say, for example, you invested in an S&P 500 index fund. Well, if the S&P 500 index goes up 3% for that day, then your index fund will also be up 3% in value for that day. Now, on the contrary, if the S&P 500 is down 5% on the day, then your index fund, which follows the performance of the S&P 500, will also be down 5% in value for that day. And finally, mutual funds. What are these? So a mutual fund is almost like an index fund. In fact, you could technically say that an index fund is actually just a type of mutual fund. And while that is true, the two are still different. Mutual funds are almost always actively managed. This means that there's a management team or fund manager who controls the fund's day-to-day investing decisions. The goal of a mutual fund is to try and outperform the market, and so a fund manager will do their best to allocate the funds within a portfolio in a way to do exactly that. Whereas most index funds are passively managed, which means there is no fund manager moving investments around and making financial decisions for the fund. Instead, most index funds simply track a specific stock market index, and they try to match the performance of that index instead of trying to outperform it like with mutual funds. Now, honestly, I know I'm gonna get a ton of hate in the comment section for saying this, and that's fine, but I personally don't see any situation where it makes more sense to invest in a mutual fund over a low-cost index fund or ETF. Mutual funds are more expensive, and they almost never actually beat the long-term returns of a passively managed fund fund such as an ETF or index fund. You see, like we just talked about, mutual funds are actively managed. That means that there's a fund manager who manages the day-to-day operations of that fund, and you better believe he's not doing it for free. In fact, he's actually getting paid really well, and his salary is simply being pushed back to you in the form of higher fees. In fact, the average cost of a mutual fund is about 0.82%, whereas the average of an index fund is around 0.09% and can be even lower for ETFs. For example, Fidelity actually offers ETFs that have a 0% expense ratio. Take FNLIX or VZRAX for example. Both are completely free to own and there are no hidden costs or fees. So of these three, which is actually the better investment? I mean, where should you be putting your money? Well, there is no one size fits all answer. I know that's what you're looking for. You want me to say you should absolutely, positively, definitely, certainly invest your money into ETFs. But honestly, it really just depends. It depends on your investing goals and which of these investments will help you to achieve your goals more efficiently. It depends on how much control you want over your investing strategy and which of these investments will give you the most flexibility and liquidity. I would say if you're looking to completely automate your investing and never have to worry about touching your brokerage account like ever, then go with a low-cost index fund, preferably from Vanguard. Something like VTSAX or VFIX are both really great index funds from Vanguard that you can invest in. Now, if you're somebody who is looking for just 100% flexibility and control over your investments, then I would say you should probably go with ETFs. Because ETFs trade on the stock market just like stocks, they're a lot more liquid than other investments like index funds or mutual funds. ETFs will allow you to quickly buy and sell to make adjustments to your portfolio in just a minute's notice. Okay, and finally, mutual funds. Now, as much as I don't like mutual funds because they're expensive and they almost never outperform low-cost index funds or ETFs, there are still people who really like them. If you just really enjoy the idea of a fund manager managing your money and you also enjoy paying more money to get less of a return, then yeah, go with mutual funds. No, you know what? Don't go with mutual funds. I don't think that anybody should use them. They're just simply not worth it in my opinion. No, but seriously, overall, you choosing which of these investments is gonna work for you ultimately just comes down to personal preference. You honestly cannot go wrong with putting your money into any of these three investments, even mutual funds. As much as I don't like them, even putting your money into a mutual fund is a million times better than just letting it sit at your local bank savings account where it's collecting no interest. It's actually losing value because of inflation. So even doing that is better than nothing. Now, here's the secret, okay? Here's the trick to getting started with all this stuff. If you can get started as soon as possible, invest regularly, and pick the right index fund or ETF that's gonna give you a high enough return over the years, then you will without a doubt retire a millionaire. It's inevitable, the math is there. You just have to be willing to make the sacrifices now. Treat investing as an actual expense, like as a bill. Each month you're required to put away X amount of dollars into your brokerage account so that you can invest it into your future, right? And then you can take advantage of the compounding interest over the years of you investing, which that's where the magic happens and that's where millionaires are made, is because of that compound interest. Hey, thank you so much for watching. By the way, my name is Joshua. If you enjoy content like this, then I would love for you to subscribe. And as always, I will see you again very, very soon. All right, take care.